Tyler. Evening.
Hey, good evening. How's the rest of your day shaping out so far?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Just feeling lazy. Lazy Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah.
Heard that. Hey, is there a session after this?
Yeah, but you don't have to be at that one.
Okay.
It's just a general information session. I run the same one every month,
Okay.
unless you just want to meet up.
No,
Come
no, no.
on. Come
Nope.
on, man.
No, sir.
Okay. Start.
Oh boy, you letting the lettuce grow out too?
Letting the what? The
Letting
hair?
the lettuce grow out too? You getting in the long hair club?
No. Just again lazy.
No, tell people you're growing it out for a Halloween costume, and
That's true.
I've been using that one for years. Eventually I gotta do something with the long hair.
You and Geo, you can just put the baseball. I'm not a big hat wearer, so I can't really put I can't do hats too much. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right, go ahead and start this thing. I don't know if the marketing person is coming. It may just be us, which is fine.
Yeah, do you talk to Geo often?
Yep. And now it looks like we got some people trickling in. Welcome, everyone. As you start coming in, if you would, I'd love to know where everyone is calling in from. So why don't you post your city there in the chat?
And bonus points if you're calling in from Chicago.
That's right, because Tyler and I are both from Chicago.
Very first one, Shannon. Chicago. Charleston. Beautiful, beautiful town.
Hello, world. It's we got a programmer here. Maybe Robert, you're either from like the metaverse or you're actually an AI. You're a AIG, artificial general intelligence, AGI. Norfolk, nice. So if you're just coming in, we're all just posting where we're calling in from tonight. Yeah. Ashley, welcome from Charleston. New York, yes. New York and Chicago. Monterey, wow, nice.
Well, finally, some West Coast. I was wondering if we had anybody out there.
Yeah, Spokane.
Spokane.
Oh, did I faux
I
pas
don't know.
there?
I
Is it
actually thought that.
Spokane or Spokane? I know it's got to be.
Yeah,
I either
maybe
just made like some people mad or made some people happy. I don't know.
Christine, give us the pronunciation in the chat. Spokane or Spokane? Portland. I was just in Portland last weekend. Can. Nice. Nailed it.
Oh boy, I was telling a story earlier today in a meeting about the best UX designer that I ever worked with, and I was talking about how she started out as a sales associate at Lululemon, and I just kind of froze, and I was like, "Did I say that right? Is it Lululemon? No, it's Lulu." I couldn't. I waffled back and forth, and I was like. If I had just kept going, like nobody would have cared. But I can't. Like I had to halt the whole meeting and be like, "Did I just embarrass myself? Is it Lululemon?"
Lululemon.
Lululemon. I hear the clothes are very comfortable.
Oh yeah, man. Dress pants changed my life, dude. Excellent. But that's a conversation for another day.
We'll have to do an episode on fashion design.
Oh yeah.
Fashion design and product design, the crossover.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so much for posting where you're from. I'm going to ask a little bit more audience participation here right at the beginning because I would like to know what your current occupation is. That could be a full-time or a part-time job. Could be stay-at-home parent. Could be volunteer. Whatever your thing is right now, I'd love to know what you're involved in. Okay, an analyst. And BI is business intelligence. Is that what BI stands for? Nice. High school. Tina, what are you thinking you're gonna do after high school?
I'm a designer.
You want to become a designer? Oh, nice. Customer insights research. Property manager. Graphic design. Nice. Concierge at a day spa. So the reason why I'm doing this, Zena, lawyer, that's awesome. Director of digital transformation, biomedical engineer, or UX designer, Tina. Wow. Maybe I can sway you one way. I mean, we need both of those, so we'll be very happy with whatever career you choose to go to. The reason why I'm asking you all to do this and keep posting if you haven't yet, because it's just so interesting to see where everyone's coming from as they learn more about like different product design strategies. So much of what we talk about in these episodes is very useful across any domain, across any occupation or technology. What we like to do with these episodes is kind of generalize a little bit. So especially what we're talking about tonight, I think is really helpful with all the different backgrounds that you've got. I kind of think we're all designers in one way or the other, whether or not we're a professional, whatever that means, professional designer. I think we all have the innate capabilities and creativity to be curious problem solvers. So again, thank you so much for coming tonight, coming out and spending a little bit of time with us. So with that, let me share my desktop and we'll get into some introductions and move into our episode content. All right, so this will be a little bit more informal than maybe some of the workshops or webinars you've attended. We like to kind of get into Figma, a design program, and Tyler and I will be kind of working back and forth and having a conversation back and forth. So this is going to be a more informal chat and workshop and co-design session. I encourage you, though, to participate. If you go down and look at the bottom of your screen there, you will see a Q&A icon with the two little chat bubbles. So you may at any point ask a question. At some point we may pause and answer the question, or we may kind of deflect and come back and answer at the end, but we will try to get to all of the questions. We also have live closed captioning going right now. So if you would like to use the closed captioning, please toggle that little live transcript icon there. My name is Joshua Robinson, and I'm the director of the product design program here at Flatiron School. So I work primarily with the curriculum team, and we develop all of the content, the labs, the assessments, the quizzes, the experiences that the students have going through the program. So I have been working with Flatiron School for several years now, several iterations of the program. And it's just an absolute joy to see this program continue to grow and scale and to get to share a lot about what we're doing with everyone. And Tyler, if you want to introduce yourself.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry. I thought I was muted. I started clearing my throat right as you're doing your introduction. No slight intended at all. My name's Tyler. I am one of the instructors on our product design team. So if you join our live program, if you want to do the 15-week course, there's a good chance that you and I will be working together. My background's, yes, I instruct, but I'm also a bootcamp graduate myself. I went to bootcamp in 2016, focusing on UX UI. Since then, got out into the world, worked for a few companies, worked on a few projects, got some real life experience under my belt, and returned to instructing, because before I got into this, I taught middle school. So there's always been kind of that passion for like education and working with others, teaching people, helping people gain new skills. And this is just such a cool experience for me, because instead of teaching things like, I mean, not to say that they're like more, I used to teach English language arts, and there's a lot of good conversation that can be had here, but this is so impactful because people are gaining skills that they're directly translating into new professions, new careers, and just something I find really, really cool. And I'm excited to have this conversation with Josh and hopefully with you guys through the chat the rest of tonight.
Awesome. So just so you know, we have an information session about the Flatiron School program. So that was a great segue, Tyler. So if any of you have more in-depth questions about the program itself, about what product design is, how you can transition from your current career into being a digital product designer, you might want to join that info session. So I got the info session link right here, and I'm just going to copy it and paste it right in the chat in case anyone wants to sign up. And that is going to be happening right after this session. So you can sign up right there if you want to come over. And I'll be leading that session as well. If you don't want to attend the info session, you can sign up for future sessions or some of the future episodes that we'll be leading. If you go to our website right here, flatironschool.com, courses/product design bootcamp. And the next episode that we're going to be doing in a month will be how UX and UI come together, right? So a lot of times we hear, should I study UX? Should I study UI? Both? Research? What do I do? And we kind of come and plant a flag and say, you need it all. You need to kind of learn it all in order to be a great designer these days. So we like to talk about how the best designers don't really distinguish that much between UX and UI. It's not actually that important to say, well, this is a UI thing, that's a UX thing. And we like to think about UX and UI like the human brain, just with two different hemispheres. And then we'll talk about how you're more credible, influential, and adaptable when you're using elements of both UX and UI. So that'll be episode 3. All right. So with that, let's talk about onions. Do we have any chefs here in the audience? Aspiring. All right. So I think problems are a lot like onions. You peel it, there's always a layer underneath. There's always going to be something else that is related. They're complex, they're not necessarily well-defined. And you might start at the outer layer, but once you start asking why, and you get deeper and deeper and deeper to the solid core. So when we're talking about problems, we have to sort of map out what we know about that problem. And one way we can do that is by using a 2x2 matrix. And this matrix helps us to understand, given any problem, what we might know or not know about that problem. So if you look here, you've got 4 quadrants. You've got the known, right? So these are facts that we know to be true. And then moving across the right, you've got known, unknown. Right? Now, these are questions that you know that you don't know, okay? You know what you don't know, all right? You know that you've got to go out and research. You've got to find answers to these problems, whether it's about your customers, whether it's about your organization, whether it's about anything in your life, right? You have a way to go and get more information. So this is a known unknown. You know that you don't know. All right. Now, if you move down to the bottom left, you've got an unknown known. Okay. This is the area of like intuition. This is sort of the gut instinct. Okay. So if you ask me about, let's say, cryptocurrency, I have a lot of unknown knowns, meaning I have a lot of intuition about how the currency works, and the crypto market and NFTs and those things. I've done enough research and reading where I have some gut instincts about what this thing is. Okay, so I've got some unknown knowns. Now, the wild, wild west is right here in the bottom right quadrant. This is the unknown unknowns. This is when you don't even know that you don't know. You might call this a blind spot, right? How do you know if you don't know that you don't know? Right? This is what can get us into trouble as problem solvers, not just designers, as problem solvers. We can get into deep trouble when we don't know what we don't know. And so when we're talking about problem framing, it can kind of help to plot out a problem across these 4 quadrants and help you map the territory, so to speak, about what you do or do not know, and help be like a guiding compass or orientation or a light post to help you figure out what your next action is. So if we think about problems as actually a collection of nested problems, back to sort of the onion idea, I really like this graphic here because it's such a simple representation of the unknown unknowns, right? As product designers or as curious problem solvers, we often look at the decay in the tree or the plant, and we come up with all of the known knowns or known unknowns or unknown knowns spring to mind, right? Okay, I don't know much about soil nutrients or the pH balance in the soil, but I know I don't know that. So I can go and research that. I can go to Wikipedia, or I can go to my local shrubbery, what do you call it? A garden center. And I can ask questions. All those things are in those other quadrants. The unknown unknown is what is below the earth. It's the actual thing infecting the soil or the tree, right? It's the thing that we don't know that we don't know. And when we don't know, we get into all kind of issues. So I'm actually going to talk about this down here first. I'm going to talk about the Cobra effect. Is anyone familiar with what the Cobra effect is? Sometimes, this is a kind of common reference, but not everyone knows what it is. I'm interested if people have heard of the Cobra effect. Well, if you're not, the Cobra effect is in colonial British Columbia, or Great Britain rather, in the early 20th century when they were colonizing India. Okay? The generals were very concerned about the local cobra population. So what they did is they offered a bounty. And they said, I got a solution to this. We're going to offer a bounty for any dead cobra. So the locals all came and, killed the cobras and started bringing them, and they got, 5 British pounds or whatever it was to kill the cobra. But, the smart people said, you know what? We can keep doing this. So they started breeding more cobras, right, all over India and bringing them, just masses and masses of cobras and breeding. Well, the British caught on to this, and they said, you know what? We're stopping this bounty program. And all the local people said, well, what do we do with these hundreds of thousands of cobras now? And they just let them go. So they ended up with exponentially more cobras than they started with. That is because there were too many unknown unknowns. Pardon me. So there's something called the slow elevator too. So if let's all imagine together that we are caretakers, or we own a building, and we have tenants, and the tenants are coming and complaining about a slow elevator. Now think to yourself, what are some of the solutions that you might come up with to fix this? Right? You might try to make the elevator faster, right? You might work on, the turn. You might work on the pulley system. You might work on, it might just be a setting if it's a digital elevator. All kind of different things you could do. Well, what a lot of companies do is rather than worry in older buildings is they will put mirrors around the outside of the slow elevator. And they have found that they don't have to do anything as long as people are able to look at themselves and see reflections and kind of be interested in what's going on around them. They're distracted, so they don't really care about how slow the elevator is. So they put mirrors in the elevator, and that's actually been shown to reduce people complaining about how slow the elevator is in old buildings. So this is one of those sort of things that goes against your intuition. And there are interesting and innovative solutions out there to a lot of these complex problems that we would never think about if we don't reframe our understanding of the problem. And that kind of all comes around to, you know, what we're talking about tonight is using different tools to reframe problems. Tyler, do you want to weigh in here?
No, that's super interesting. I hadn't heard the slow elevator before, but from what I'm taking away from it is, you know, instead of reacting to exactly like what we're hearing, completely looking at the problem as being something completely different, right? So instead of people thinking the elevator was slow, it's actually the problem is people are bored in the elevator. It seems like time is passing by incredibly slow. So with a little bit of a distraction, that got rid of, you know, the complaints, which, yeah, I just think is, you know, super cool, especially, you know, in the world of design. We're constantly, you know, thinking about what are all the ways which we can turn this problem on its head, to reimagine and try and get at the root cause of things. Because even like gearing up for tonight and thinking about what we were going to be talking about, one thought that just kept coming back to me was like how many times I've worked on a product team or worked for a company, and we build really cool things, but people don't pick it up because it's not like solving the right problem for them. It's doing something really awesome, but is it really providing value for the people that we thought that we were providing a solution for? And I think the slow elevator just kind of like, oh yeah, totally, like that's absolutely how you can reframe a problem and deliver a solution that maybe people hadn't thought of before. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Let's go over here. So, one of my favorite designers is Richard Sahlwerman. So he's really an architect, background in architecture, studied under some very famous and influential architects. But he is known as the father of information architecture. If he didn't coin the term, he was one of the first to kind of use it widely to describe a separate science, a separate field of study, separate from library science, information architecture. And if you don't know, you don't have to worry about what that is and how that relates to product design. But what he says is that the creative organization of information creates new information. On the surface of it, that sounds very simple and I suppose intuitive, but when you start thinking about what that means with product design, it starts to make you sort of look at all the different variables that go into decisions in a different way. And it makes you sort of imagine like how you can rearrange certain things to come up with a completely new understanding. So you think back to like the elevator, the slow elevator, right? It's rearranging or reframing your understanding of a problem. So as a way to demonstrate like this quote in practice, I suppose you could think about like a spice market. Okay, so let's say you're a proprietor of a grocery store and you've got hundreds of spices. What are all of the different ways that we could organize our spice aisle or our spice display? So, and feel free just to drop it in the chat because there's probably hundreds of different ways we could organize it. One of the top things that spring to mind are, of course, going to be color. We could do it what's that called? Like the Schofield index?
Yeah, Scoville. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's only for hot sauce, maybe, or for peppers.
We see application. I feel like that could be applied a few different ways, like broken down a few different ways. So used in like French cooking, Latin cooking, Asian cooking.
Okay,
Size of
I'm gonna say
grain.
like cooking style, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sweet and savory.
size of grains. That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, that's a real good one. Popularity. So what's probably
Oh,
selling the most?
yeah,
Give the people what they want, put the most popular at the front or at the back. So everyone has to go through the other ones first.
yeah, right.
Right. That's a clever one. Health benefits. So group it by things that promote good gut health, that promote good heart health, skin health,
Yeah,
culture. I think that's what I was trying to get at with the cooking style. Who would have thought there's so many ways to, divide up one little thing, right? Some spices.
yeah. So, oh yeah, that's a good one. I was thinking that one earlier, and then I just forgot. Origin, yeah, like where the actual spice comes from.
Mhm.
Um, so I think what's interesting about this is how do you make a decision? Like, what is a good decision to the question, how do we organize the spice aisle? Because in different situations, these are all valid, right? You have to really ask the question, what's our goal? What's the problem that we're solving for customers, right? Like, are you taking a customer centric view of the problem? In which case, maybe you would do some observational research and see how people are naturally, using the spices or looking for the spices. You could do desktop research to find out search engine results, like what are the top spices and Google search results. The point is, the way you change all of these spices, the way you arrange all of these spices has a new meaning depending on your decision. So extending that idea, let's say that we were given a task to create a guidebook to anywhere, whatever your favorite place on earth is, right? So just imagine whatever your favorite place is, whether it's Paris or Chicago, and I don't know. I hope no one's favorite place is Chicago. I love Chicago, but like I wouldn't be like my favorite place.
Greatest city on planet
Thoughts?
Earth for like 4 months out of the year.
But 4 months is your favorite place. All right, so you've got your favorite place in mind, okay? So you're asked to create a guidebook for someone who's never been there. How do you arrange the information in the guidebook? Do you arrange it by geolocation? Do you arrange it by street grid? Do you arrange it just by alphabetical order, like a dictionary, so they can quickly search? Are you optimizing for search, quick reference? Are you optimizing for like the long haul? Do you want them to use your guide all the time and be reading about it, immersed in it? Or do you want them like in and out because the whole point is to experience the location? Like, what's the goal here? How you creatively arrange the information creates new information and by extension, new experiences. So who you're designing it for, the goal of the design, how you frame the problem changes the solution drastically in many cases.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think to kind of summarize like my takeaway, sorry, that's kind of what I resorted
Yeah.
to. Like hearing what you're saying, like how it sounds to me like, like we have this certain amount of information. We have a finite number of spices. We have a finite number of like things to experience in a location, but depending how we organize those things, like what is in its immediate, like what's the context around it, completely changes the meaning of that one individual thing. So, even how we organize information and pair information together will drastically change the meaning of the thing, right?
Yeah. And changes how our customers perceive the thing, right? I mean, going back to the spices, if you arrange all the spices by country of origin, that is a piece of information that a customer picks up on. There's something about that carries meaning with it. It says something about your brand. It says something about your grocery store. It's right, like it says something. If you do it by alphabetical order, that says something too. It's new information. If you just do it by color of cap or brand, most grocery stores I feel just do it by brand, which
brand
to me is very lazy. Like it just seems like lazy to me. Like that's not how I would want to experience shopping for spices. Like that just seems like the lazy way to do it. And each brand is like alphabetical within the brand. That's so annoying because then
I feel like that's kind of like the Craigslist experience, right? It's not super sexy, but everything's like listed like where you can find it exactly. You know what you're looking for, but is it the most discoverable thing in the world? No, right? Like, am I going to discover new spices or like new things to try if I know where I need to look each time to find something? No, but that's also probably part of that like spice market or that grocery store's intended user experience, right? You want people to find what they're looking for quick and easy with as little friction as possible.
yeah.
That might be a part of it, right? So
Yep. Versus slow down and have kind of an experience. Put some recipes there that uses that collection of spices, right? Have them slow down and like consider like how amazing all these different combinations can be used and kind of have a moment there. I mean, it's a totally different mindset for a brand or a grocery store, and it may not be appropriate for brand A, but it may be appropriate for brand B,
Yeah, and somebody in the chat said alphabetical order would be applicable for most users, I think. And again, I think it's what's the real problem that we're focusing on? Is the problem to get people in and out of the market as quick as possible to find what you need and get out? Or is the problem being able to discover new spices that may like work with other things that you've tried before? How we set up our spices will be completely different depending on what is our intended experience. What do we like want our users to be able to like solve or to walk away from this with? Get in and out real quick, or discover something new and create a different type of experience.
Yep. And it changes the relationship between ingredients, not just spices, because if you are doing like recipes, then you would want to create some sort of relationship between that spice and then the other ingredients in that recipe. So it's about relationships, it's about connections and information with all the different elements that we're designing with. Okay. Something else I was really thinking about when it comes to framing problems. So people respond to given options based on whether they're presented in a positive or negative way. So this is called the framing effect. We talked about the Cobra effect earlier. This is the framing effect. Okay, so there's a famous study done in 1981 by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They are the authors of Thinking Fast and Slow, if you are familiar with that book. So this study done in 1981 came up with two hypothetical treatments, and they asked a whole bunch of people to choose treatment A or treatment B. So treatment A is here on the top. I know it says treatment 1, treatment 2, but this isn't really the best graphic, I think, that I chose, but there we go, fixed it. Okay. Treatment A and treatment B. Yeah. Treatment A had the positive framing. They told everyone that 200 patients, 200 out of 600, may live. Okay? They said 33% chance in this treatment option, treatment A, of saving all 600 people. And only a 66% chance of saving no one. See the word saving. The negative framing of the exact same thing is that 400 patients out of the 600 may die in treatment B. There's a 33% chance that no people will die, but a 66% chance that all 600 people will die. Okay, these are the exact same outcomes. Okay, statistically, it's the exact same risk assessment, basically, between A and B. It's just that one uses positive language, one uses negative language. In A, 72% of respondents chose A, right? Only 22% would, when given the negative option, would choose to use that treatment. So I kind of said that a little confusingly, but I want to be clear about what I mean. They weren't the participants weren't choosing between A and B. So it was two separate sets of people, right? They said, would you adopt this treatment if we gave it to you? Okay. 72% of people said, yes, we would accept the treatment when it was framed positively, but only 22% accepted the treatment when it was framed negatively, exactly the same outcomes. Okay. So this shows you the power of how you frame something.
Yeah, and just like you're saying, it's the same exact information, but different context. It's creating a whole different meaning. In one, like it's a positive meaning. The second one, it's kind of like, oh man, not so positive, right? Same exact. That's awesome.
Yep. I mean, that's why in marketing people know this too, right? I mean, you don't hear like disinfectant sprays. It's like kills 99.9% of all bacteria and germs. You don't hear 0.01% of all germs will live. All right. And then something I think is important to acknowledge here when we're talking about problem framing, it's definitely a political process in an organization. Many times designers are given solutions. Let me rephrase that. Many times designers are given problems that are actually solutions in disguise. Designers are given a problem that is framed in a way that makes only one viable solution. And it's sort of biased towards what the VP wants, right? Or the CEO wants, or the product manager wants, or the dev team wants. So in order to do this kind of work with problems and words, it takes a bit of institutional courage, I think, and negotiation. So I like this graphic here because I think this good representation of how so many problems that we get as designers are just like this poor fellow, like looking for his wallet. He knows the wallet isn't there. He knows he lost the wallet in the park, but this is just where the light's shining. So that's the only place he goes, right? And a lot of problems that designers are given are like this, right? They're not where the real problem is. They're not where the real value is to be found, like Tyler was saying earlier. They're just where, the comfortable place, I would say. It's more comfortable to just say, oh, okay, customers are telling us this. Well, that's the problem. It's more comfortable just to accept what's given and not kind of ask, well, now why is that? And who told you that problem, right? Who interviewed the customers about that problem, right? Were the interviews biased towards, wanting to get to some type of information? That absolutely happens in customer interviews. So it does take a bit of negotiation and courage sometimes to kind of dig into this stuff. All right. So how do we do it, right? That's kind of like what this is all leading towards. How do we actually get creative with organizing information in a way that creates new information? Okay. So I like to think about reframing and resolution. So when I say resolution, I don't mean to finalize or to solve. I mean resolution like HDTV, like high resolution versus low resolution, okay? And I love this graphic because I think it's such a good, easy way to understand what is meant by resolution, right? So this is Picasso's bulls, sketches that he drew. And the sketches go from increasingly high resolution to increasingly low resolution. Or you could think of it as low abstraction to high abstraction. Okay, so in the ones on the right here that are just the line drawings, the bull is highly abstract. It just suggests that shape and outline of the bull. It doesn't fill in all the details, right? You could even think about this as like scope, big, wide scope, right? All I'm thinking about is bull. My problem is a bull. But as you move over and fill in the details, get more and more detailed, you think, oh, okay, my problem is this specific kind of bull, right? It's a bull that has this pattern. It's a bull that has this shape horn. It's a bull that has this length of tail. You're filling in all the details. And you can do that with problem framing, right? You can say that the problem is, I don't know, what's a problem, Tyler? What's a just generic, abstract, kind of heavy problem?
Oh boy.
Okay, you took too long to answer.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever the problem is, right? It's about how much detail you want and specifics you want to put into that problem to actually solve. And which ones go in there and which ones are left out, what's represented in the problem, what's not represented in the problem. That's a political decision, right? That is a decision that impacts your customers, that impacts your users, that impacts the solution. And it impacts the design teams. Like, that's what really frustrates me a lot of times about when design teams are just given these really generic problem statements, or they're given problem statements that are so specific there's only like one solution that would even work to that problem statement. So if the problem statement is too high level, too abstract, you're going to get so many different ideas to solve that problem. Too high level, too big scope, too abstract, too line drawing of a bull. Okay? Because when you've just got the abstraction of the bull, you have 1,000 different ideas of how you could make that bull more specific. You could make it green, you could make it red, you could make it hairy, you could make it hairless, you could make it have a tail, no tail, all the different things, right? 1 horn, 3 horns. You got all these like things that you could do. On the other end, if you're too prescriptive in your problem statements, there's only 1, maybe 2 ideas that would even work. You can't go anywhere else with it, right? You've so narrowed into the scope that there's only 1 or 2 viable ways to solve it. So you're looking for a nice sort of area where it's not so wide open fields that you can do anything in the world, but it's not so narrow that there's only 1 solution that would even work. You're looking for that Goldilocks problem area. And this is not easy, by the way. I mean, that's you know, it sounds kind of easy on its head, but it's actually not easy to get to this. So now I'm going to jump over and kind of show you some of the techniques that we like to use to be able to get to this. So I'm going to show you a few fishbone diagrams. I love these diagrams. They're called Fishbones diagrams for the obvious reasons that they kind of have an outline of fishbones, I guess. Kind of. I don't know. Never seen a fish quite like that. So if you look here, you've got the problem on the far right, lost control of the car. And around the outside edges, we can call them the fins or the flippers, I guess, you have the main causes of the problem. Could have been a flat tire, could have been a slippery road, driver error, or mechanical failure. For each of those main causes, you ask why. Why did that cause occur? And you start filling in detail, right? Driver error. Why? Because they were reckless, because they were sleepy, because the driver had poor reflexes. And you can get even more detailed. Why did the driver have poor reflexes? Because they were chemically impaired. If it's mechanical failure, Maybe it was brake fluid. Why was it a brake fluid issue? Well, maybe you had fluid loss. Maybe you had worn pads. You could even keep branching, right? And ask, well, why were the pads worn? And you get down to what we like to think of as root causes, right? You can get down to these root causes of the issue. And what you're doing effectively here is plotting out what we talked about at the beginning. You're sort of unconsciously mapping out all of the different variables around a problem. And then you look at those variables and say, I never thought of this, right? Maybe I need to go talk to some customers. Maybe I need to go talk to a subject matter expert and find out more about this problem, because I don't even know what questions to ask about mechanical failure, right? So that helps you to understand what questions you have, what questions you don't even know to ask, what you definitely know to be true, and what's just gut instinct, what your intuition is. I love I didn't mention this earlier, but I love the intuition area, because that's when you start making prototypes as a designer. Okay? It's a hypothesis, right? You've got gut instinct, intuition. I'm going to make a quick prototype and go out and test it and see if I can move some of that intuition stuff up to facts. Right? And then here's another example of the fishbone diagram. Something more kind of digital in our domain. You've got low website traffic. This is pretty common to a lot of orgs. So what are the main causes of that, right? Is it the price of your product? Is it placement? Is it your market positioning? Is it the people? Is it the design? Whatever it is, right? And you do the same thing. You start asking why. Price point too high. We don't know the market enough. If it's in the positioning, maybe the industry is changing about or around our market. And what does that mean? It means you've got too many unknown unknowns, right? So this kind of tells you, again, where do we need to go? Another useful tool is this abstraction ladder. And what's cool about this one is that it goes in both directions. It asks why and gets lower and lower and lower in terms of, or rather, excuse me, higher and higher. It actually gets lower in abstraction. It's sort of like flipped. It's kind of weird, but it's still useful. Okay, so if the toaster keeps burning the bread and you ask why, well, it's toasting too long. Why? Because the toast length settings are confusing. Why are they confusing? Because they're represented in single digit numbers, which are meaningless. Okay, so you are getting more specific as you move up the ladder, or you could say you're getting lower in abstraction as you move up the ladder. More specific is the easier way to say it. I just like saying abstraction, I guess. And then on the bottom rungs, you start moving towards how, and these hows match with each rung of the ladder. So the toaster keeps burning my bread. How can we solve that? By better visualizing what toast settings will do to the bread. How do we do that? By showing toast indicators that represent time or level of toastiness or color of the bread. Well, how do we do that? By adding a heat-proof graphic to the side of the toaster or creating transparent toaster walls to view the bread as it cooks. Okay, getting more specific with your solutions, right? So when you make an abstraction ladder like this, what's helpful is you can take this to your team or to your designers or to your developers or your manager or whoever it is that you're working with. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be a designer to use these things. And you can say, what is it we're actually solving for here? Right? Like, at what level are we trying to solve these things? Because as you get more specific, there's just less that you can do. You've determined what the solution is. But if you move back up a few levels of abstraction, you're getting that Goldilocks area where it's like, oh, there are a couple of different things. And we want to go and test those different things so that we learn more and get up to like factual information. Go ahead, Tyler. Sorry.
No. I think that this is a healthy exercise to do anytime you have like a goal that you're working towards or an initiative, to ask yourself, why, to make sure that you're really getting at the root issue. And something that I think about every time we come across this lesson, every time we talk about the ladder of abstraction and five whys, like asking why, kind of like we're 5 years old, right? I think back all the time to like my sales days. And right away, I like, oh, my goal, like I got to sell more copiers. I got to sell more like office equipment. Ask myself why. Well, so I can make more money. Why do I want to make more money? So that I can, squirrel it away and retire sooner. Okay, well, even thinking about that, I've completely reshifted my perspective. And it's not so much selling more, but the actual problem and the actual need here is me being able to like save my money or manage my money a little bit better. So now, instead of, which of course, like selling more in a sales job is never going to hurt you. But now I've reshifted the problem and I've really gotten to the why am I doing what I'm doing? And that's going to impact my behavior. So maybe I was thinking about it really on the front end, like, oh, more money in, more money in. But it's actually kind of like, hey, I could do some things on the back end to save some additional money. I don't know. It's just an analogy that always comes to mind when we talk about the ladder of abstraction and asking ourselves, like, why are we doing something? I think it's so valuable to do with any goal that we set for ourselves.
Yeah, having more information gives you more options, right? I think you're looking again for that sweet spot where you have optionality, right? Like there's trade-offs and costs to the things that you're talking about. Yeah, you could increase your sales, but you're also going to increase the amount of time that you spend away from your family, right? Or some other cost, right? And so when you have options, you can start to weigh like, okay, what's valuable? What's most important to me, right? I can explore other ways to save money that don't impact like the time with the family. So you've, but if you're so specific and focused on the very, very low abstract problem where it's so specific, you've limited your options. Yeah, that's a really good example. I like that.
And how it circles back to product design, like when you give yourself that optionality, then we can take that, put all like have those options, put them in front of our users and get real feedback as far as like what do they find valuable, what do they find impactful, versus going to them with just one solution that we're kind of like, all of our eggs are in this basket, all of our chips are right here, right? And that increases the likelihood, even subconsciously, that we're going to bias our research that we do, how we ask questions. Whereas if we have a few options that we can present to users, there's less of an investment in like one solution being the right way to go or one problem being the right way to go. So it only makes our products stronger and more valuable for our eventual end users. And I mean, that's what we're all doing this for, right? For the end user.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No, that's a really good way to describe it because there's a great book that is about that principle called is it The Black Swan? No, Anti-Fragile. Anti-Fragile is I think the name of the book, and it's about that idea, right? That when you have options, you're not putting everything into one way of solving the problem, right? You are able to withstand volatility, right? So if the market changes or if the customers all of a sudden change something or maybe like the underlying, I mean, let's think from a design team perspective, like what are things that happens all of the time? Budgets change. Oh my God, right? Like we sunk a month and a half worth of like research and work into this. And then all of a sudden they said, you know what, we're going to shift the money over here. The project's dead. Okay. Or, what's another situation that happens a lot in teams? The VP of product leaves and someone new comes in. So all of a sudden you got a whole brand new kind of like strategy changes. So by being what's called anti-fragile, you're not going to crack, right? Your product or your designs are not going to crack under the stress of the volatility going on around you. So, sorry, that was kind of a whole side thing, but it is a really, really good book. And also, I would say a life principle. So, cool. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about here are something that we often use called problem statements. Now, problem statements are nothing but formulas, plug and play formulas that you use to create statements or phrases or sentences that define the problem for yourself or for a team. What it does, it allows everyone to look at, read it, debate it, and say, yes, this is what we align on, this is what we agree is the problem we're solving. Or to say, you know what, that is way too abstract. It's too high level. We need to narrow the scope of who we're solving it for, when we're solving it for them, and what we're doing, right? So you can use statements just like you can use pictures of bulls, whether it's a visual or whether it's a written statement, to increase or decrease abstraction or scope. Okay, it's just using words. There are 20 different formulas that you can use to plug in a problem statement. I am user trying to do something, but there's a barrier because of something out there in the world, and it makes me feel some emotional reaction. Or I'm a user and I need a way to do a certain thing because I have this objective or goal I'm trying to get. Or the 5Ws, our persona, our user has a problem that occurs when this happens, where they're doing that, and our solution should deliver this because of this. Okay, so the formula is irrelevant. Okay, the formula does not matter. Some of them fit better times than others, but the whole point is you are using some type of formula over and over again. I think consistency is probably what you're looking for. It doesn't matter which one you adopt, really, but if you're consistent with how you phrase the problem statements, then it becomes easier to craft the problem statements over and over again. And so if you agree with your team or your organization that this is how the formula we're going to adopt, rather than having problem statements all have like different formulas, it's just kind of a helpful constraint, I guess, enabling constraint, I like to call them. So you could frame it from the user's perspective, you could frame it from a user research perspective, or like I said, base it on the 5Ws: who, what, where, when, and why. And I like words and I get kind of nerdy about this stuff. So I like to play with different variations of the problem statement and start seeing how that changes, how that changes the tone. Sometimes going back up, like remember the framing effect. Sometimes our problem statements can be too negative sounding. Sometimes they can be too positive sounding, and sometimes they can be too optimistic. So, play with the tone, play with these problem statements and see how these little changes can sometimes have a big impact on what you're doing. All right, I talked way too long, and I am really sorry about that. We did not get to actually dive into creating some of these charts like I wanted to, but we've got about 3 or 4 minutes, so I'll get us started and show you how you can start doing this and mapping out your problem space too using a Fishbone chart. So Tyler and I discussed a little bit before this session that, guess what? Here in Chicago, we both had our basements flood in a torrential rains that happened on Sunday. It is not fun. I don't recommend it. But this is a problem. Right? So we said, oh, this is a common problem. We can probably come up with a bunch of different causes and start breaking down the why behind these things and talk about it a little bit. So I know for sure one of my root causes is that the sump pumps failed.
I think looking at this, like, would this be more of like equipment or the actual like result of the thing?
It's the cause of the basement flooding.
Okay. All right.
Another cause is that there's a flood control pit that connects to the Chicago sewers, got overflowed. All right. And we can be generic about this. So if anyone else in the audience here has had a basement flood, I would love to know what are some of the main causes of your situation. And you have all of my empathy. Having a basement in the first place.
Yeah, which I feel like could potentially be like environment, right? There could be some environmental factors here.
Yep.
So needing one, I know that my basement isn't completely underground, so it doesn't have as much room to like absorb moisture than anywhere else.
Yep.
Which would have thought, I had no idea that water just like seeps right through the concrete, comes right up through the bottom.
Yep.
Thought it was a little bit more concrete than that, but also I think one cause could be, well, I don't know. My mind jumped to like people involved, right? Like is there something that me as the homeowner should have known or done
Yeah.
differently?
And see,
Unfortunately, I can't edit.
oh, I'm sorry about that. Well, that's all right.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Right. And see, I can keep going down. I mean, this could take me several hours to fill out. And I would do this with a team, right? Like, I probably because I want to get a diverse range of opinions and ideas behind this. So you always want to involve multiple people, multiple situations in this. Um, so I could continue going down into each of these. Why? Mechanical failures. If it's the sump pump, why did that fail? Because I didn't maintain it, or let's say it was out of date, right? They have lifespans, right? And you just build up your fish bones like this so you have a good old fish fry or whatever. Um,
How very Midwest of you.
Drainage design, yeah. So what I might do, let's see, that wouldn't be environmental. I'm not sure if
That
that would
might be
be.
like infrastructure, you know, like city
Yeah,
infrastructure. So I
yeah,
feel like that's different than mechanical, something that an individual would control.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you there. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh
drainage
boy.
control. Yeah. Outlet for water drain. I wonder what that would be. That would probably be under infrastructure as well, right?
If it's the outlet, maybe mechanical. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Even
that's
just
true. Because
because that's like how I made the distinction in my mind was individual versus like more macro, like city. Like I can't control anything the city does, but
yeah, that makes sense.
which live right here, like why perspective working in teams is such a great way to ideate and to pick out a problem. So as we're doing this too, I just want to circle back to talking about problem statements just real quick,
Yeah.
because as we're doing this, we're trying to dig to like what is the root of the issue here, right? We identified basement flooding and we're trying to suss out all the potential like reasons for this happening. And once we land on something that we feel makes for a viable problem and we craft a problem statement to it, we don't just set that down and be done with it and go start designing solutions. As we come up with solutions later in the design process, we're always checking our solution against that problem statement to keep ourselves in check. Like, is this solution actually solving for this problem that we've identified? We spent so much time and resources identifying the proper problem. Let's make sure that we're designing and creating a solution that directly solves for that problem. And as you guys learn more about the design process and uh, even specifically like anyway, as we talk more about the design process, a big emphasis is how critical settling on the right problem is. This isn't just like one thing that you spend a few hours on, you set it down, you forget it, but this follows you throughout the entire project and really determines the success of your product. We identified this problem. How successfully does your product address this problem you identified?
Yeah, I mean, wow, it really is a sort of underutilized tool for curious problem solvers everywhere. I try not to say just designers because it's so useful to anyone, whether you're in design or not. But I just think it's underutilized. It's hard because we like to just be comfortable and accept that someone told us that the customers said X, Y, Z, and so now we should think about changing, whatever. The other thing about problem statements that is really important to think about, again, is who you're solving it for. That also has to do with framing the problem. When it comes to solving flood control, we can think about many different situations. It could be first time homeowners who have home insurance. It could be renters in the city who live in buildings over 100 years. Do you see how that narrows who you're solving the problem for? It's not just the entire problem statement that can sort of grow and shrink in scope. It's also the audience or the persona that you're solving it for can be larger or smaller. We could just say renters. That's a larger scope than renters in the city. That's a medium scope. And then a smaller scope is renters in the city who live in buildings over 100 years. So the more specific you get, right, the more you're narrowing your scope. So try writing some problem statements. send them to me and Tyler over email. It's just first last name at flatironschool.com. I would actually, if someone does it, I would be really happy if you sent me a couple of iterations of problem statements that you came up with, given any problem that you mapped out, maybe using a fishbone diagram. So if anyone does this and wants some feedback on it, send it to us. I think it would be super fun to give you some feedback on your process and kind of keep you going there. So with that, I think we're done tonight, but I want to say thank you so much again for coming out. Please sign up for episode 3 if you're interested in how UX and UI come together and why there's really not that much difference in them. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Good night.